How's it going, everyone? As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. This is PSReady, my channel all about PlayStation that covers all the latest PlayStation news. So if you want to know what's going on in the world of PlayStation, help me out by subscribing and setting your notifications to all. In today's video, I've got 5 topics to cover because there's just that much going on in the world of PlayStation, starting with this SSD that's on sale for a great price. Then the first real big story is that Sony is looking to acquire the parent of From Software. So Sony is trying to buy Elden Ring. Third on the list, we now know what kind of chip the PS6 and the eventual handheld will use. Fourth, you don't need a PS5 to play PS5 games anymore. Yeah, for real. And fifth, I collected some new huge PS5 Pro patches for the few of you out there who actually picked one up. This video is sponsored by Scry. That's right, Scry is back with their PSReady November takeover to tell you about their great new products. First up, there's the Arctic AI-powered PS5 coolers that start from $39. And second, there's the Nitro Flash PS5 heatsink SSDs, which start at $129. And the coolers are coming along with great new features. First up, there's the Smart Thermal AI chip. This thing will monitor your PS5's heat output and adjust the fan speed accordingly. So if you hit 50 degrees Celsius, it'll kick up the fans to maximum, and then once you drop to 49, it'll gradually lower the fan speed. Then you've got the dynamic hyperfluid fan. This fan is patented to not only dynamically adjust to the PS5's heat output, but it'll also keep the noise level optimum. And third, they've got lamella design for maximum airflow. The cooler's lamella design is also patented, and its big surface area provides maximum airflow, so there won't be any blockage for that hot air to get out of your PlayStation 5. And there are 4 key benefits to using a cooler with your PlayStation 5. First of all, it optimizes airflow. It'll keep your PS5 cool by getting that hot air out. Second, it'll protect and boost the lifespan of your PlayStation 5. It'll protect the internal parts from damage and extend the longevity of your console overall. Third, it'll prevent shutdowns because heat builds up while you're playing. If you're getting that heat out, that'll never happen. And fourth, it'll extend your playtime because if your PS5 is kept cool, performance will be kept at maximum. And these coolers keep working when your PS5 is in rest mode. Your Arctic V2 will slow down its fan after 2 to 3 minutes, and the Arctic S will take 3 to 5 minutes because the vents are smaller on the PS5 Slim. When you're ready to check out everything that Scry has to offer, click the link in the description. Once again, huge shout out to Scry for sponsoring this video. Let's get this first topic out of the way. There's a great SSD on sale. This is not affiliate linked or anything like that. I'm just always looking out for SSD deals because my PS5, despite having around 4 terabytes, depending on which one I'm using, is constantly running out of storage between games and footage and everything like that. One of the most popular drives for the PlayStation 5 is the WD Black SN850 whatever series. They've had the X, they've had the Pro, they've had X, Y, and Z different names for it. Today we're talking about the SN850X, and depending on which one you buy, it's on sale for a great price. So if you want to grab it without a heatsink on Amazon, Walmart, Best Buy, it's on sale for $130, which is on par with every other SSD I've talked about at cheap prices. You will have to buy a heatsink for the SSD, which costs like $7 or $8 on Amazon. Putting those on is kind of a pain in the butt, so I'd just pay a little bit more and get the one with the heatsink because it's only $5 more, so $135. Again, this sale is running now on Best Buy, Amazon, and everywhere else. I'll try to put a link in the description, so if you plan on picking it up, that will go back to me, but like it's pennies, so just search it if you want to. I'm just throwing it down there just in case. So let's jump into this first news story here, which is the biggest one you've probably heard a little bit of already, but Sony is in talks to buy Kadokawa. And who is Kadokawa? They're the parent company of a bunch of studios, including From Software. And this was initially reported by Reuters, which is like a news aggregate site. It's huge. And then Kadokawa actually put out a statement that yes, they are in talks to be purchased by Sony, which makes a lot of sense when you dig into the nitty gritty. So the biggest reason this applies to PlayStation fans is that Kadokawa owns From Software, so if Sony purchased them, they'd pick up the rights to a ton of games like Elden Ring, the Dark Souls series, Sekiro, Demon Souls, and of course Bloodborne, which they already own, but then they'd own like the studio that makes it, so they'd get a big share in one of the biggest franchises in gaming. I know all of those games have different names, but like they're really all part of the same franchise for those who are tuned in to the gaming ecosystem because they're all the same core identity, right? Like attack is on the right bumper, you get limited use healing items when you go back to the bonfire or the site of grace or whatever they call it in each specific game. All the enemies respawn. They're very similar games, so you know, you group them all together. There's a couple other interesting things. First of all, Sony already owns 14% of From Software, so they're making money off of every sale of Elden Ring, whether it's on PC or of course Xbox or any other platform that they sell games on. Also, Also, they own a couple of other studios, like the studio who made Octopath Traveler and Mario and Luigi Brothership. Those are two separate studios that are owned by Kadokawa. But the big reason Sony wants to pick them up, in addition to From Software, is that they'd also get rights to a bunch of manga and anime properties that they could then put on their streaming services that they own, which are the biggest ones like Funimation and Crunchyroll, right? Like Sony wants an anime and manga empire, and they also probably wouldn't be too upset if they picked up the studio that makes Elden Ring as well. So of course, when you talk about Sony buying up the studio that makes Elden Ring, it clearly makes the Xbox side of the fence mad. They come at Sony fans saying, you guys criticize Xbox for buying Activision Blizzard and Bethesda as creating a monopoly, and then now when we get an industry consolidation on your side of the fence, you don't care. And it's a completely different situation. If you buy From Software, you get an action RPG studio that makes similar games, all with different names, that all play pretty much, you know, the same from a 10,000 level up view, right? Like Sekiro in the nitty-gritty style is completely different from something like Elden Ring, but at the core, they're all very similar games. So it's one studio making one type of game, and then Armored Core is a little bit different, but you can't really compare that to Activision, where yes, you are getting Call of Duty, but it's not one studio making Call of Duty. If you buy Activision, you get Call of Duty, but you also get Raven Software, you get Beenox, you get Neversoft, you get Vicarious Visions if they're still around, you get Blizzard, which is making all these huge games like World of Warcraft, Diablo, StarCraft is getting an open world shooter apparently, Overwatch. You get the studios like Treyarch and Sledgehammer Games, you get a bunch of Marvel games like Marvel Ultimate Alliance, you get a bunch of Transformers games. The amount of stuff that you get by buying Activision is absolutely insane. And when it goes for Bethesda, they're a lot smaller than Activision, but again, it's a very similar situation to Activision, where not only are you getting the Elder Scrolls, you're also getting Fallout, you're getting Wolfenstein, you're getting Doom, you're getting id, you're getting Machine Games, you're getting Bethesda Austin, you're getting Bethesda Game Studios, you're getting Starfield. Like, there's tons and tons of studios and tons of IP. Whereas with this new acquisition, if it were to go through, you're getting From Software and two other small studios who are making mid-level JRPG style games, right? Like, it's not really comparable at all. I also don't really get it from the perspective of like losing these games on Xbox, because Xbox players don't really buy games. They play games on Game Pass, and From Software stuff traditionally never comes to Game Pass. Like, yes, a couple of Octopath Traveler games did, but like, you don't buy the games. We just got the sales data from Capcom. PS5 games from Capcom outsell Xbox games from Capcom 18-1. So I don't really get the problem, right? Like, if you want to play these games and you are an Xbox only owner, which I doubt you are if you're watching this channel, just build a PC, because they're going to come to PC too. They're not going to just come to PlayStation, because now Elden Ring is like a massive IP. It's one of the biggest and best selling games of this generation. So yeah, I don't really think it's a fair criticism. And on top of that, the only reason this is happening is literally because Microsoft is buying all these studios, right? Like, Microsoft might be becoming a third-party publisher. They might be putting Halo on the PS5 platform, but they haven't put these huge games out yet. They've only done small stuff. So if I'm Sony, I'm not going to sit there and let Microsoft buy up the entire industry. You got to fight back, and you got to go for the studios that sell the most on your console, which is From Software. They're like one of the biggest and best studios around right now. So Microsoft really forced their hands by consolidating the industry as much as they have. And like, altruistically, it'd be nice to see Sony not do that, but they have to. I think it's good overall. Like, Sony needs to get more developers in there, because games are taking so much longer to make. And the only way to kind of pad out the schedule in between releases is to have more studios making games. I mean, I don't see game development times getting any shorter as time goes on. So really, the only way to account for that, again, is for Sony to go out and buy up studios like the one that's making Elden Ring. And maybe we'll finally get Bloodborne 2. There have been talks going on for a while now, like weird rumors coming out from people at From Software saying there are talks happening. And now that we have the news that maybe From Software is going to be purchased by Sony through their owner being purchased by Sony, it makes a lot of sense, right? Like, why would you greenlight a Bloodborne remake if you're in talks to buy the studio? You want to get the studio first and then give them the money, because then you own the entire thing. But yeah, to sum this up, as a PlayStation fan, I love this. I've played every Dark Souls game. The first one, the remake, the second one, the remake of the second one, the third game, which might be getting a remaster as well, Elden Elden Ring, Bloodborne, and Sekiro. I played all of those on the PlayStation ecosystem, so if Sony buys this studio, nothing really changes for me. So it makes me excited for the future, knowing that an IP that's already so heavily associated with Sony will officially be under their umbrella. In my opinion, if you're a PlayStation fan watching this channel, there's no reason to be anything but super excited. This is great news. Anyway, that brings us to the second news story here, which is that we now have some info on the chip that's going to run on the PS6 and eventual PlayStation handheld. You know, between the two, I'm most excited about the handheld. I know that a lot of people talk about the Steam Deck kind of bringing back handhelds into the main gaming ecosphere, but like, it's not the case. The Steam Deck has sold around 3 million units, which puts it at like a sixth or something of what the PS Vita sold. So it's not really bringing back handhelds. I think the thing that really brought them back and made Sony and Xbox so laser focused on doing one of their own again is of course the Nintendo Switch, which is one of the best selling consoles ever. But still, whatever you're blaming or, you know, praising for bringing back handhelds, I think it's a good thing overall. So this is coming from an ironclad leaker, which is great. They're over in China and they have direct access to what companies like Sony and Microsoft are working on because they stay so far ahead. Like we just heard that the PS5 Pro is in development since even before the PS5 came out. They stayed that far ahead. And this leak also confirms what we already kind of knew, which is that Sony is going with AMD next generation. There was apparently a big fight between Intel and AMD, and Sony ended up going with AMD, which makes a lot of sense because, you know, the last few generations and pretty much every PlayStation generation has used an AMD chip. So if you're building a console with 2 generations of backwards compatibility in mind, you don't want to have to port everything over to run on a new architecture. That just makes a lot of sense. But the real meat and potatoes here, obviously, is that both consoles, the handheld and the console, are going to use the same chip. That kind of confirms that they're going to want it to run PS6 games if it can, which is great, but it also confirms that it's going to be backwards compatible with PS5 and PS4 games, which of course makes it the ultimate handheld, which is really damn exciting. But yeah, that kind of brings me to the next story in the video, which is that all you need to play PS5 games now is a PS Plus subscription. So this is a new update for the PlayStation Portal that's currently in beta, and it seems really cool because it's adding in a feature that a lot of people have been asking for from launch, which is being able to stream games from the cloud. Now, unfortunately, again, it is in beta, and even with that, if you want to get into the beta, you need a PlayStation Plus premium subscription to take advantage of this feature. But if you pay in the money to get a PS Plus premium subscription, you can then get this update and then play over 120 games directly streamed from the cloud. So unlike the normal setup, which streams the games directly from your PlayStation 5, you're going to be able to stream them up to 1080p, the resolution of the screen in the portal, directly to the console from the cloud, which is really cool. It's not a technology that I'd ever really be interested in using. I've got enough devices in my house that actually run the things natively, and if I'm going to a handheld, it's definitely the Steam Deck because it does everything that the Portal does, but it looks better and it can play games natively, and I just love Steam as a whole. Now, the jury's still out on how good the quality is going to be. I've tested the PS Plus streaming over the years, and it's not great, like especially with PS3 games where you're playing them at like, what, 720p at maybe 30 FPS, and there's blocky textures, weird latency and everything like that. But the newer generation of games you get to, the better that the streaming kind of tends to be because the games are made with it sort of in mind. And again, this is Microsoft forcing Sony's hand. Microsoft has their cloud streaming and their whole "this is an Xbox" ad campaign they're running right now where like your fridge can stream Xbox games or whatever. So Sony, it's kind of smart to just bake an update in for the PS Portal and not really go full force on making this a feature. Just say, hey, if you got a PS Portal and you have PS Plus Premium, you can now stream 120 games to the device. It's making everyone happy because it's a free update and it makes a product that you spent over a couple $100s on work that much better. So yeah, it's just interesting from the perspective that theoretically, if you have a PlayStation Network account and PS Plus Premium, you don't even need a PS5 anymore. You could just go to the store, spend a couple $100 on a PS Portal, and then stream the games from the cloud, and you don't even need the console. I wouldn't do that because the console is so awesome, especially with the PS5 Pro, but if you're cheap, if you don't have a lot of money, this could be a cool way to start building out your PlayStation library without actually having to buy a console or any games. But yeah, that brings me to the last story of today's video, which is just a PSA about some PS5 PS5 Pro patches that just came out that are actually good. So the first one is the Callisto Protocol. Say what you will about this game's gameplay and story, which are both the actual graphics in the game are phenomenal. I played it back when it came out in the 30 FPS mode because it was relatively rock solid and it looked phenomenal. So if you have a PS5 Pro, it's about to get even better because they updated the performance mode to run at native 4K at 60 FPS and it looks really awesome. But the quality mode got an increase too, and it looks as good as it did before, but now you can run it at 8K. I'm curious if it would downsample on a 4K TV, like run it internally at 8K and then downsample it, which would make it look super clean. But the fact that the PS5 Pro is actually delivering on 8K gaming with a game that looks as good as the Callisto Protocol, that's pretty cool. And speaking of the Callisto Protocol, you probably missed this, but the developer put out a new game called Redacted, which is like a cel-shaded top-down roguelite. It honestly looks cool. I just have enough stuff going on right now where I haven't had time to play it. That got an upgrade as well to run at 4K 120 FPS, and that looks really good in action. And then weirdly enough, Ubisoft has gone back to one of the Assassin's Creeds that's like a fan favorite, Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and they've upgraded it for everything. So whether you have a PS5 or PS5 Pro, you can finally play this game at 60 FPS. And weirdly enough, this is the one Assassin's Creed I haven't played. I actually remember buying it during a Black Friday sale. It went on sale the year it came out for $8. And even though I didn't have a lot of money at the time, I was like, hell yeah, I'll pick that up for $8. And I promptly never played it. But it takes place in London. You've got two main characters. There's a Jack the Ripper DLC, and it has a lot of diehard fans. So it's cool to see Ubisoft go back and patch it to run at 60 FPS, whether you're on PS5 or PS5 Pro. But yeah, guys, that wraps it up for this jam-packed episode of PS Ready. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Remember to subscribe and set your notifications to all if you haven't already. As always, my name is Jimmy Champagne. I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching and shape on.